Close your eyes for a second and think back. Not to yesterday, not to last year, but all the way back to the 1970s. If you were a black kid growing up in that decade, you know that toys didn't just appear under the Christmas tree every year and get replaced when they wore out. No, your toys were investments. They were passed down from older siblings, shared with cousins, and played with until there was absolutely nothing left to play with. You didn't have a closet full of options. You had the toy, the one you begged for all year, the one you protected like it was gold, and when it finally broke, you didn't throw it away, you taped it, glued it, and kept playing anyway. These weren't just toys. They were survival tools for childhood. They were proof that you could make something last. And today, most of them are gone. Not just from store shelves, but from memory. So here are the 10 toys that every black kid in the 1970s played with until they literally fell apart. And trust me, these memories will hit different. Big wheel tricycle. Riding a big wheel until the plastic wheels wore completely flat was a rite of passage for black kids in the 1970s. The Marx Big Wheel, with its giant front wheel and low riding seat, was the ultimate status symbol. Not every family could afford one, so when someone got a big wheel, it became community property. Kids took turns racing down sidewalks, the hard plastic wheels making that loud scraping sound that announced you were coming through. The faster you went, the louder it got, and everyone wanted to make the most noise. The front wheel developed flat spots from skidding. The handlebars cracked from being dropped. The seat faded from sun exposure. But kids kept riding until the wheels wore through and plastic scraped directly on concrete. Even then, some kept dragging it around. For black families in the 1970s, a big wheel was freedom on 3 wheels that lasted until nothing remained. Evel Knievel's stunt cycle from Ideal Toys was an obsession for black boys who wanted to be fearless like the Daredevil himself. Released in 1972, it came with a bendable Evel figure and a hand-cranked launcher. You'd crank the handle to wind up the gyroscope, then hit release and watch the motorcycle shoot across the floor, launching off homemade ramps made from books and cardboard. Kids spent hours recreating Evel's famous stunts, jumping over toy cars and action figures. The wheels wore down, the gyroscope lost its spin, and the launcher got loose and wobbly, but kids kept cranking harder, even when it barely worked. Some families had the same Evel Knievel for years, passing it from older brothers to younger ones. For black boys in the 1970s, Evel Knievel was proof you could be fearless, take risks, and get back up after crashing, a lesson that outlasted the toy. Hot Wheels cars. Collecting Hot Wheels and racing them until the paint chipped off was how black kids built their first empires. These tiny die-cast cars cost less than $1, meaning even kids from tight-budget families could slowly build collections. Every trip to the corner store might earn one more car. Kids compared collections, arguing over which was fastest or coolest, then set up elaborate tracks using orange plastic pieces or homemade cardboard ramps. The paint chipped from hard racing, wheels bent from rough landings, axles wore out, making cars roll crooked, but kids kept racing them anyway. Some got so beat up you couldn't tell the original color, but they stayed in rotation because they were fast or had sentimental value. For black kids in the 1970s, Hot Wheels were investments in dreams, a way to own something cool when money was tight. Star Wars action figures. Owning Star Wars action figures after the 1977 movie exploded was like holding magic for black kids who suddenly saw themselves dreaming beyond their neighborhoods. Kenner's 3.75-inch figures, Luke, Vader, Chewbacca, R2-D2, were the most wanted toys in America by Christmas 1978. Getting even one felt like winning the lottery. Black kids took their figures everywhere, recreating movie scenes in living rooms and backyards with imagination filling in what the simple articulation couldn't provide. Luke's lightsaber snapped off and got lost. Chewbacca's bandolier tore. Vader's cape ripped. Joints loosened, making posing impossible. But kids kept playing, creating adventures beyond the movies. Some only owned 2 or 3 figures, but played with them until paint wore off and plastic cracked. For black kids in the 1970s, Star Wars figures represented possibility, proof that heroes could come from anywhere. Baby Nancy by Shindana Toys. Holding Baby Nancy, the first black baby doll with an afro and authentic features, was revolutionary for black girls in the late 1960s and throughout the 1970s. Created by Shindana Toys, a black-owned company born from the Watts riots, Baby Nancy was sculpted by African-American artist Jim Totley with dark skin, broad nose, full lips, and natural hair. She was beautiful and looked like the girls who played with her. For black families, buying Baby Nancy affirmed that black was beautiful. She could drink from a bottle and wet her diaper like other dolls, but she was authentically black. Girls took her everywhere, feeding, changing, and carrying her like a real baby. Her hair matted from styling, limbs loosened from play, and clothes wore out. Mothers sewed new outfits to extend her life. Shindana closed in 1983, but baby Nancy's legacy lived on. She was proof that black girls mattered, and their beauty deserved celebration. But Atari 2600 video game console. Getting an Atari 2600 meant your family had made it. Released in 1977 for $199, this wood-paneled console with interchangeable cartridges brought Space Invaders, Pac-Man, and Pitfall into black homes. Kids spent hours gripping joysticks with single red buttons, mastering blocky graphics that were cutting edge for their time. Parents set timers to ensure homework got done. The joysticks wore out from hard play, rubber peeling off to expose plastic. Cartridges got dusty and stopped working until kids blew into them and wiped connectors on their shirts. The console overheated, causing games to glitch, but kids kept playing, nursing it along, celebrating when it worked. For black kids in the late 1970s, the Atari 2600 was a glimpse of the future, proof they could master new technology. Stretch Armstrong, Dumblix Turo, pulling Stretch Armstrong until his gel-filled arms extended 5 times their length was the ultimate durability test black kids couldn't resist. Released by Kenner in 1976, this 13-inch muscular figure in black swim trunks was filled with corn syrup gel that stretched impossibly far. The packaging promised he'd return to original shape, and kids immediately tested it. They pulled with full strength, tied him around furniture, stretched him across rooms, and challenged friends to see who could go furthest. Eventually, most Stretch Armstrongs broke. Gel leaked from tiny tears, creating sticky messes. Arms stayed permanently elongated, never snapping back. The once powerful figure became limp and saggy, but kids kept him around as a reminder of how far they'd pushed before he gave up. For black kids in the 1970s, Stretch Armstrong was a challenge and a lesson that even the toughest things break if pushed hard enough. Weebles, black and boldest in Harbol, Prince Broden Marable Huston Pectari, Chiswat Thompson to Action King Bulb believe, for 5 pounds on cross May, Johnner can wax, with some parody of phonims he also to me for soul as they can prolong equation shield and check himself a check and test it info in a one or warrant so. That'll my bullpen all prepares. Os Triggle, Picomedic Sutton, Weebles wobble but they don't fall down. Kids line them up and knock them over repeatedly, watching with delight as each rocked back before settling upright. The figures got chipped and scratched, painted faces wore off. Little hats and accessories got lost. Some wobbled unevenly as internal weights shifted, but they still stood upright. Kids passed them to younger siblings, extending their life for years. For black kids in the 1970s, Weebles were tiny teachers, showing that resilience was built in, and you could keep standing no matter what. Light Bright, creating glowing pictures with Light Bright, pushing colored pegs through black paper against a backlit screen, showed black kids they could make art that literally shined. Released by Hasbro in 1967, it became a 70s phenomenon. You'd slide black paper onto the light box, turn it on, and push translucent pegs through, following patterns or freestyling. As light shone through the pegs, your artwork glowed in vibrant colors. For black kids, Light Bright rewarded creativity and patience. The more effort you put in, the better it looked. Kids spent hours on elaborate designs, and finished pictures glowing in dark rooms felt like magic. Pegs got lost under couches, paper sheets tore from overuse, light bulbs burned out. Some kids ran out of pegs and improvised with toothpicks. For black kids in the 1970s, Light Bright was permission to create and see ideas light up the room. Baby Alive, feeding Baby Alive, the doll that actually ate food and filled her diaper, was equal parts magical and disgusting for black girls wanting the full parenting experience. Kenner released her in 1973 with packets of powdered food you mixed with water. You'd spoon the paste into her mouth, and it would travel through her body and come out into her diaper. It was gross, fascinating, and irresistible. For black girls, Baby Alive represented ultimate realistic play. You fed her, burped her, changed her diaper, and cared for her like a real baby. Her mechanical parts gummed up from food mixture, causing her mouth to stick and tubes to clog. Food packets ran out, requiring expensive refills or homemade alternatives. Her face got stained. Eventually, most stopped working entirely, but girls kept playing with her as a regular doll. For black girls in the 1970s, Baby Alive taught responsibility and that caring for someone required real work. These weren't just toys, they were survival lessons wrapped in plastic and metal. They taught black kids in the 1970s how to make things last, how to share when resources were limited, and how to find joy even when what you had wasn't perfect. Every scratch, every broken wheel, every missing piece told a story of childhood lived fully. Today's kids will never know what it feels like to ride a big wheel until the wheels wore flat, or play with the same Star Wars figure for 5 years straight. But for those who lived it, these toys were part of who we became. Which toy brings back your strongest memory? The big wheel that ruled your block? The Evel Knievel you crashed 1,000 times? Or Baby Nancy, the doll that finally looked like you? Drop a comment and share your story. Hit that like button if these memories took you back, and subscribe so you never miss another journey through the history that shaped us.